Often sprinkled into President Donald Trump's dalliances at his rallies are repeated references and comparisons between him and Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, of course, is viewed by many as the greatest Republican president of all time. And many who hate Trump cringe at the comparisons. Abe Lincoln, it turns out, was very much like Donald Trump. And in fact, faced much of the media scrutiny and media disablement that Donald Trump does today. And in 1863, after the famous Gettysburg Address, now famous, the Democratic Chicago Times proclaimed that the cheek of every American must tingle with shame as he reads the silly, flat, and dishwatery utterances of Lincoln's speech. The Springfield Republican called it a perfect gem, deep in feeling, compact in thought and expression. So these were the predominant papers in that time, both smacking down Abraham Lincoln, making a speech which turns out to, every first grader learns 7 years ago, turned out to be one of the most famous speeches of all times. Somebody who's investigated this and wrote about it and written about it, knows a lot more of it than I do. The author of Old Abe, John Cribb, joins us right now. And I took that quote from a recent op-ed that you wrote in The Hill. And many people don't realize that it's not just Trump bloviating when he compares himself to Abraham Lincoln. They actually share many similarities, and you point them out in Old Abe.
That's right. Well, thank you for having me here today. But that's right. There are some similarities between the presidencies and their times, starting with the fact that they're both Republicans, right? A lot of people don't realize that Lincoln was the first Republican president, and the Republican Party was founded just a few years before he was elected, largely to combat the evil of slavery. And of course, Donald Trump is the 19th Republican president, and they were both dark horse candidates, came out of nowhere to win the nominations and then their elections. And as you say, they both governed in divided times. Lincoln certainly the most divided time in our country's history, but this may be the most divided time since then, and a very partisan press in both periods.
Right, and I guess there are places where, at the same time in their career, first running for president, Donald Trump actually had a leg up on Old Abe. There's, I guess, some lore that you break down in the book that, previous to being president, Old Abe ran a two-man law firm, and they were known to be a little disorganized. He may even, from time to time, pull a document out of his hat. Yeah. Donald Trump certainly had a lot more executive experience than Abe when he ran for president. Absolutely,
yes. Like you say, Lincoln he was a senior partner in a two-man law office in Springfield, Illinois, Lincoln and Herndon. And it was pretty disorganized. There was a bundle of papers sitting on the floor that said, with a note on top, said, if you can't find it anywhere else, look in this. One time there was a law clerk cleaning up the office, just kind of sweeping up, and he found plants growing out of the floor, the corners, where dirt had been piled up and seed. There's stuff growing there. This is some of the stuff that I tell about when I tell the story. I basically tell the story of the last 5 years of Lincoln's life in my new novel, Old Abe. You'll read some of this.
So when Donald Trump first came down the golden escalator, there are, I think, around 18 candidates, Republican candidates, who had at least filed with the Federal Election Commission. So just on straight, good old-fashioned street odds, he was one of 18. He was like a 6% chance to win on balance, right?
Yes.
What were Abe Lincoln's chances to win comparatively back then?
Well, they weren't very good either. There were four men who were considered the leading Republican candidates going into the convention, which was held in Chicago in 1860. The main one, the leading candidate really was William Henry Seward of New York. He'd been governor and senator from New York, and he was really the odds-on favorite. Each of those leading candidates, though, had something going against them. They'd said something to make one group or another's mad at him, or they were maybe considered too radical to consider to win a general election. Lincoln, on the other hand, was not many people's first choice, but people were okay with him, so he was able to snatch that nomination. And then in the general election, the Democratic Party split. The Northern Democrats and the Southern Democrats split over the issue of slavery, which let Lincoln be elected in the general election by sweeping the North. He actually won with only 40% of the popular vote, a little bit under 40% actually, but was able to win in the Electoral College. But as you say, they both were really, came out of nowhere, were long shot candidates.
Right, and when I was, doing my simple math on Donald Trump's 6% chances, that was just to get out of the Republican primary.
Right, yeah.
And then I would say it was, divisors of 6% that he would get out of it and actually win the presidency. For starters, I guess, Abe Lincoln had to beat 3 other guys on his team and then go against one. So, technically, as a amateur handicapper and odds maker, the odds were significantly stacked significantly more against Trump than even Abe Lincoln.
I think that's absolutely right. Yes, and in more ways than one. And of course, Trump was, once he was nominated, almost the entire the media establishment turned against him. And that's pretty much kept up since then, I guess.
A little earlier in the show today, I had Alan Bokhari. He's a writer for Breitbart, and we were talking about his book, Deleted, Big Tech's Battle to Erase the Trump Movement. And I had suggested to him that I think the media is actually snapping back. It's like worse than ever, because they all realized Donald Trump was so sensational when he first came out that even the left-wing channels, they wanted him to win the primary because they figured there's no way he could ever win the general. So they gave him so much earned media, right? And
then, they covered his rallies wall to wall before he was nominated.
That's what I'm saying. They created the monster almost. So he Trojan horsed them a little bit, And then I also think the way he figured out that he could manipulate Twitter to connect with the masses, they're 3 years late on catching up to that now. And Cambridge Analytica, although they've come under some serious fire, they figured out how to use Facebook's open API and suck down information to target those little niche Trump voters that they thought they needed to push a little more to get them to vote. And again, I think Facebook learned from those mistakes. And between Facebook and Twitter and Google, they're taking what Trump taught them in the last election and trying to double down against it to make sure he doesn't do it again.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's right. And it's interesting because that's another parallel with Lincoln, is that Lincoln, like Trump, was somewhat of a genius at trying to make sure he got his word out directly to the American people. And Trump has been doing it with tweets and these huge rallies and 90-minute press conferences. Lincoln made sure that his speeches and some of his writings were printed in newspapers, and to cultivate relationships with certain editors to make sure that happened, so that people could read his words directly. Kind of similar to the way Trump does.
Wow. I mean, Trump has, if you ask me, Trump, like Abraham Lincoln, has significantly changed the way presidents will campaign and govern forever, right? You even see Sleepy Joe Biden is actually tweeting. We know it's probably not him. It's probably someone on his team. But even Joe Biden is trying to use, social media and Twitter to his advantage. So Trump was a revolutionary in that sense. You seem like an objective guy. You've done a ton of historical research on presidential behavior and stuff. We're just polling everyone today on, how do you think this one turns out?
Boy, I don't know. It's a nail biter, isn't it? I'm thinking now that Trump is going to take Florida, and I'd be surprised if he didn't take Georgia. I think that let's put it this way. I think the pollsters who are saying that those Midwestern states are really the ones to watch. My guess is they have it correct. It's really going to depend on and of course Pennsylvania. But all this would fascinate Lincoln, since he was a Midwesterner. He would have his eyes zeroed in on those states out in the Midwest too, I think. But we'll see. It's going to be close one way or the other, and I'm afraid we may not know the result for days.
He'd be after those northeast, Midwestern Canadian border states for sure. All right, well, John, I want to thank you very much. I'll encourage my audience to go out and check out Old Abe. Old Abe is out from the Republic Book Publishers, just came out, and it reminds us that America, despite some tragic flaws and failures, is a nation that has always struggled mightily to reach the highest ideals. Thank you very much, John. I really appreciate your talking to you today.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
John Cribb, we're going to come back right after this. We're going to wrap up the show. We'll correct some mistakes that I may or may not have made. We'll have a beer, and I'm going to do a little breakdown on some stuff breaking on the Max Rose, Nicole Maliotakis Congress race right here. Back after this.